being a non-binary person that sometimes has the choice to either go into a men's restroom looking like this. So you can look at me
No,
looking like
it's just
this.
interesting that I thought this was a trans debate. That's
Oh,
what I
don't
thought.
even.
That's
Non-binary
what I
people.
thought.
Non-binary
I
people
will
fall
say-
under the trans
I will say-
umbrella.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe you
crazy.
could educate yourself a little bit
I
on
think
that,
I think I
and
could
maybe
educate
then you would
you.
figure
I think I could
out,
educate
you know,
you,
what
right?
reality is.
Oh,
and what
whoa.
isn't.
This is going to be a reactionary video to the recent Jubilee middle ground debate with the trans liberals versus the trans conservatives. Things did get pretty heated during this debate. I'm just glad that no one got hurt physically. In my opinion, the conservatives definitely won this debate. They came with the facts, and a lot of what they had to say made perfect sense. Maybe you disagree, maybe you feel that the liberals made more sense and that they won the debate. And if you feel that way, that does not mean that we are enemies. So let's get into it right now.
It is a safety concern for trans women to share a female restroom. Can the agreeers please step forward?
Oh.
It depends.
Yes.
So I think that to start it off though too is it's not necessarily saying that trans women. It all comes down to self-ID. When we moved into a self-ID process, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of men, just simply self-IDing into being trans women to utilize the female restroom and to harm women. I think
Or
that's the
just
biggest
be
thing.
there. They're getting arousal from just being there.
You know, there was a photo or it was a video that went viral, I think like just 2 weeks ago, with some like whole man with a boner in the women's restroom. And there's just some poor woman filming it. Like, am I just supposed to like accept that this is here? So I think there's levels to it. I think that trans women who are actually trans, you know, we're talking gender dysphoria, transitions, making the effort, you know, probably once you reach a certain point in your transition where you can actually assimilate within that space and not cause a disruptance, that would probably be the ideal time to start doing that, right? Whereas, you know, a cross-dresser who is emboldened to, in this current climate, say that they're trans because now anything is trans if you say so, that person should probably stay absolutely out of women's restrooms.
I agree. When I started my transition, I did not immediately start using women's spaces, such as locker rooms or women's restrooms. I can remember starting my shift early in the morning at 4 a.m. when I was working on this particular job back then, and what I would do, I would go to the men's restroom and apply makeup. There was no one in the restroom with me that early in the morning, so I was able to not have anyone harass me or look at me strangely because I didn't feel comfortable going into the women's restroom, using the women's restroom at that point, that early in my transition. Fast forward about 6 months after being on hormones, I was at a store and I had my cart, I was pushing it, about to turn a corner, and there were two guys coming from the opposite direction, and I nearly ran into them, not paying attention. Or they nearly ran into me, and one of the guys said, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am." And I looked up and he said, "Oh, ma'am, sir?" He looked confused. He didn't really know how to address me. So I just smiled and said, "Oh, you were right the first time." So from that moment on, I felt that it was safe for me to start using the women's restroom and women's locker rooms at my gym that I belonged to at the time. But early in my transition, no, I did not use those spaces that were for women. And even now, if I'm going to a women's restroom, I will not use the restroom standing. That's something I will not do in a public restroom because not only does it make me feel uncomfortable, but it's going to make other women feel uncomfortable too. If you're a trans woman who's pre-op and you're standing in the women's restroom while using the restroom, and even sometimes at home, I try to be very discreet. I don't want other people to hear what's going on in the restroom, hear me using the restroom. But usually at home, I feel comfortable enough where I will stand, or if I'm using a private restroom, but never in a women's public restroom. And if you're a trans woman who's pre op and you're using a women's public restroom and you're standing while you're going, I don't think that's a great idea. In fact, I think that's definitely something that will make the women in the restroom, if there are women in the restroom, feel uncomfortable. Even if I'm alone in the women's public restroom, I will not stand because I just don't want to run the risk of making anyone feel uncomfortable. And I already feel, dysphoria by, you know, if I have to stand in a women's public restroom. I hope that made sense. It'll be interesting to hear what the liberals have to say about this one.
I want to comment on Blair's point. The one thing I kept hearing through all of the nuance is passability.
I never
Because
said that.
ultimately, when we talk about passability, it determines how you get harassed in the bathroom. Because honestly, if you don't look so passable or whatnot, people are going to say, oh, that's a man with a dress on, and then there's going to be discourse. But the reality of it is, honestly, who cares who's trans and who's cis going in the bathroom? You should be minding your own business, being able to pee and do your business in peace for the most part. That conversation around this man with a boner on or whatever like that, I saw that picture and I thought to myself, that's really a right-wing talking point and conservative propaganda because that's their ideology.
How is it
when
It
it
was a
comes
thing
to
that
trans.
happened.
I'm speaking. That's their ideology when it comes to trans. It's because conservatives have a basic level understanding of what transness is in the first place. And with all due respect, I do not think any of you are basic, but they use you as the baseline to amplifying this propaganda.
How
I'd
is
like
it
to ask you a question.
propaganda if it's a thing that really happened? It was caught on video. Like it was an actual occurrence. It wasn't
Okay.
staged. It happened, and that's not the only. It's not an isolated incident.
But that's not enough for me to say because actors can do that. Who knows? They could have been an actor trying to make a point against trans people. But this has always been our battle. It's just like, from what I just heard you were saying with your talking points, because I did understand what you were saying. I just got the word passability out of there. And
Which I didn't
to
say
a-
that word at all.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
no.
saying
It's true. I do think that self ID is creating a problem. Yes, there are predators out there, but the majority of us who identify as trans women are not predators. All we want to do is mind our own business while using the women's restroom and then leave. And as far as passability goes, I know that not all of us totally pass. And, that's not something that we can immediately change. It requires work, it requires time, money, and focus, dedication. And not all of us have access to surgeries or the resources that it requires to properly pass. However, it's very important that if you're going to use the women's restroom and you are in fact trans, it's important that you make an effort to try to present yourself as the opposite sex, as a woman, as much as you possibly can. Showing up in a women's bathroom with a beard or masculine traits, very masculine traits that can be concealed, it's just not making the effort. And in my opinion, I don't think you have the right to use the women's restroom if you're presenting yourself in that way. If I'm using a women's locker room, I haven't used the women's locker room or a locker room in quite some time now, but when I was using the women's locker room, I was probably about a year or two into my transition, and I made sure that I covered up as much as possible. I wasn't completely, walking around completely nude around the women's locker room because for one, I would not feel comfortable doing that, and I'm pretty sure that most women in the locker room would not feel comfortable with a trans woman who's pre-op or even a trans woman walking around nude in a women's locker room. So, out of respect for the women there, if I had to change or if I needed to, apply lotion, I would usually go into a stall and do that. But if I'm walking around the locker room, leaving the shower, I'll have a towel wrapped around, a long towel where all of that, would be concealed for no one else to see. And I did not run into any issues while doing that.
Because I do understand both sides. I didn't, I'm almost a decade into my transition, which means I was one time a year in, 6 months in, 2 months in. So I understand that. But I also knew at the very beginning of my transition that if I'm not at a place physically where I'm not making people feel uncomfortable or I'm making people uncomfortable, then
Right.
that's on me. That's my
Correct.
responsibility to make sure that I'm going places a certain way to make sure that they're comfortable.
Because it's for
It
your
was my
safety
respons-
also too, right?
Well,
Would you also
you
say
can-
that you're safe?
Well,
Your
I know
safety
that
plays a part.
you seem to be looking at through the lens of always trans being the priority. I'm looking at through the lens of women being the priority here. There's
But
plenty of situations
Why? I just want to know
because
why
it's them who
around
would
that.
fall victim to not actual trans women, as I said, but people posing as trans women,
I have an
people who
answer.
are
But
actually
trans women are
trans.
also victims of that
agree.
as well.
I'm sorry. I would love it if the two of you have said your piece, and I would love to hear.
Yeah,
from the
everybody
other.
Yeah,
else
yeah, I
needs
just
to
want to
talk.
make this
Nobody else
point.
is
I just want to
talking.
make this point as well. But trans women also experience violence and also need
No
that
doubt.
protection. And so that's the
No
thing.
doubt.
Like, it should be an even playing field. I'm not saying you're wrong, but what I'm saying is I would like to challenge you to expand to make sure you're being inclusive of both sides or whatever, because
I
we
am.
have to have these important conversations between cis women and trans women.
I mean, I
and I'm
think-
just gonna say, and I'm not gonna just say cis women. I'm gonna say women, biological women. I want to make it inclusive of everyone.
I think the middle ground, though, is, and I feel like I'm not coming at this from an extreme place. I feel like an extreme place would be like no trans women in the bathroom ever. That's the extreme position. I'm saying work on your transition, take it as your responsibility, and be respectful. And that's the middle ground, right?
This is
Okay, so if you're a trans woman and you're doing the best you can, you're giving it your best by trying to present as a female, I do not think that trans women or that all trans women should use the men's restroom. I don't think it's safe, and I don't think it's right, really, because if you're making an effort and maybe you don't pass totally, but you're making an effort and you're somewhat passable, I believe that you have the right to use the women's restroom. Some of you probably disagree with me on this, but trans women, you're wearing a dress, you're presenting feminine, you do not need to be in a men's restroom. Using a gender neutral bathroom is fine if you have that option, but you don't always have that option. And if I had to choose between the two, between a female public restroom and a female private restroom or a gender neutral private restroom, I would definitely choose the gender neutral private restroom. Mainly because I like my privacy.
I do think that something like you have to be on hormones or something like that for 2 years or something before you can even change your ID, like across the board. That
I
would
think that's a
eliminate
bit extreme.
the
2
cross-dressers
years,
from being able
no,
to go there,
that's-
because then you can say, hey,
that's
my ID
too
says
long,
this,
in my
and you
opinion.
and so it shows that you've actually taken steps. It's not about passability, it's about how long you've actually been taking the steps to transition.
Yes, taking steps,
I
yes.
support the transgender military ban. Agreeers?
I think that oftentimes when you talk about trans people in the military, people forget that most places, if we're talking about feet on the ground and really going into war zones, are really dangerous for trans people. And so it's really an extra risk.
You're talking about the culture that exists over
Yeah,
there.
the Middle
Yeah,
East,
yeah.
it's
So
like that's not exactly
the
trans
friendliest
friendly.
place
It's
for
actually
us,
the
yes.
opposite. The medications that we take sometimes put us in conflict with being able to actually be combat ready. But there is some nuance here, obviously. Like if there was a trans cook or a trans medic, I'm not exactly going to be upset. But for the most part, when it comes to combat,
I hate supporting, like what you just said, I hate supporting it because it goes to the narrative of the should athletes compete in sports, but
Trans athletes?
Yeah,
They
the
shouldn't.
drugs we take do
No, they
weaken
should
us,
not.
you know, so we're not, like you just said, combat ready, but we're also not as physically strong as the guy counterparts standing right next to us.
And
So trans women competing against biological women in sports, I'm not in support of that either, because not all of us, but most of us have an advantage over biological women. Those of us who did go through male puberty. And there are a lot of women who would dominate someone like me in sports. I'm only 5'8" and I'm not a professional athlete, but a lot of the trans athletes have competed on a professional level. They've been competing on a professional level for a long time. Therefore, they've had years of practice and they condition their bodies in a way to excel in that sport. So I think the solution for this would be for us to have our own leagues instead of trying to force our way into women's leagues like this. I don't think it's fair. And with the military, I do not think that women or trans women or anyone who's on hormone replacement therapy should serve in combat. That is a life or death situation. And I don't think that we're in the proper mental state to actually be serving in that capacity in the military. But Blair made a good point. You know, it's working as a military cook, or say you want to be a computer programmer in the military and you're trans. You know, I think those types of fields would be suitable for someone who is transgender and who is on hormone replacement therapy to pursue. I don't think that's discrimination when safety is involved, because being on hormone replacement therapy, it does affect, you know, our mental state. I'm not saying that we're crazy, but no, we are not in the condition to be on the front lines serving in combat. And I wouldn't want to be anyway if I had to, or if I were given that option.
The military, like, because I couldn't get Big Tarby overseas, you know?
Yeah, so I will say, as probably the only person that served in the military on this
Yeah.
entire
Yeah, we
panel.
like her.
You should have spoke first.
I served in the military.
It's okay.
I
The
was
thing
in the
about it
Air
is, I think
Force for
there is a
a
lot of
brief
nuance in
time.
this. I actually have friends that are currently serving in the military. I think there was a lot of
Prior to being trans.
misrepresentation of what the trans ban actually did. You know, you have soldiers, if you have surgeries, they go on profile, which means they can't actually do their job. They can't do PT. If you have bottom surgery, it takes a year. And so as a leader, that person's filling a position of a job of somebody that should be doing it. I don't mind somebody who is actually on hormones going there, because there's a lot of people, I mean, people take PTSD medications overseas. They actually take 6 months of medication with them. So a full out ban, I don't necessarily support, because I think that everybody in the military,
Yeah,
as long
I
as you
don't
can do your
support the
job, you
full out
can go
ban
in there
either.
and
I think
nobody really
trans women
cares.
or
But it is
trans
those times when
people
if you can't
should have
perform
the
your
right to
job,
serve in the
that
military
becomes an issue.
if they choose to do
You
so.
talk about with HIV, actually, most people don't even realize this. If you contract HIV while you're in, you can stay in a
Yeah.
non-deployable job.
Right. And then also,
I did serve in the military during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, so things were different back then.
I think
Rules.
it's very discriminatory to keep trans people out of the military. We pay our bills here, we pay our taxes here, we are Americans, we deserve to serve this country as well. However, you all did raise some great points about the concern and safety of trans people. And I do agree that something does need to be done about that to protect us. Who's protecting us in the military? Who is?
I mean, if you're even diagnosed with like mild social anxiety, you're not eligible to enter the military. If you have like a crooked left, pinky toe, you're not eligible. So discriminatory, I mean, that word sounds pretty in today's climate, very much like, oh no, discrimination, but it's not always bad. Sometimes it's for the safety, and it's like, when it comes to the military and when it comes to keeping America safe, that has priority over anyone's feelings being hurt.
Discrimination is discrimination, and I don't think there's
not always a
any other
negative
way
thing, though.
around it.
Well,
It's
when-
still
when you say
discrimination.
That doesn't mean it's
protect
negative, though.
Our troops over there, while they're over there, you're talking, or protect them before so they can get in?
Both. It is important to protect all trans people in the military.
Well, we can't waste
And so what if the
resources
best way to protect them
protecting
is not putting them in the Middle East with Muslims that are going to kill them?
Well, I just want to interject your point about suicide. So as somebody who has worked in community service with community members directly, a lot of their suicide issues actually revolve around access to finances. And the military is one of the highest employers of transgender people. So we actually see the suicide rate drop. And
Well,
for me
that's a good
personally,
point, but it's one of the highest employers of anybody.
But if you're suicidal and you
Good
go
point.
into a job that has a high likelihood of PTSD, causing PTSD and all these other issues, then it becomes a big issue because then you already have one mental illness, and then you're compounding it with more.
And when you're
Right, you're a
on,
hazard.
a very strict regimen of, if you're trans and if you're really trans, and we can get into who's really trans later because I'm
Yeah,
have a lot
I
to say
wanna know
about
what
that.
you're
But
talking about
if you're going to
that.
be on hormones, right? You're not always going to have access to those drugs when you're deployed and when you're in those situations. That's why I say if you're, a line cook or something, if you're whatever, that's one thing. But if we're talking about combat, you're not exactly going to have access to your testosterone blockers and your
How do you know that? Because medical
they
care
don't have
is
those kind of
covered in the
pharmacies in the Middle
medical
East.
care is covered in the military, so they should have access to that. So that is false information.
and also you guys are forgetting
Right,
the fact, well,
but-
hold on. You guys have all forgotten the fact of what is the flip side for these transgender individuals that are signing up for the military and they're taken out, and that was their life plan. Where are they supposed to work and where is their employment supposed to be?
No, I
Because the
agree
mental
that-
illness that happens
I agree, it's
through
horrible.
homelessness and the lack of resources
agree,
that
it's
come.
horrible.
So that is also
They
the flip
actually-
side of that. So if folks
But they
don't
didn't
have,
kick
hold
anybody
on one
out.
second, but if they don't have access to a job that could offer them
Get your
support and research and access to medication, access to benefits, lifetime benefits, that's something that most transgender people in any sector of any
So
job.
do you want an answer to your question, or are you just going to rant? Because I can answer. You said, what about those people that were kicked out? I actually think it's bad if you are someone who was in it and you really are, because just like, Sarah, and I've met many trans veterans that I've paid respect to publicly on social media, and I think it's amazing, actually. So if you're kicked out and it was once, the norm
But
that
what's
you
the
could,
resources you're
I'm
offering them,
speaking,
though?
though. If you're kicked out and it once was the norm for you to participate in the military, that's sad. But at the same time, if that is what is determined for the ultimate safety and effectiveness of the military, nothing should come before that.
Blair, have you ever
Because the
worked
second
directly
bomb,
with
because the
trans
second
people?
bomb,
Have you ever worked
I
directly?
am right now.
That's
I
a
am right
dumb
now.
No,
We're
question.
directly
surrounded by
in
them.
services in terms of nonprofits and
Sir,
actually
she's a
getting
trans person.
clientele.
She's not
That's my
grassroots.
entire
She
career.
is not a grassroots
Oh, please.
Not
person
grassroots.
because truth be told, a lot of our
What does that
community
even mean?
is in grassroots.
Have you ever had a
Nonprofit
client list of
organizations that are
transgender people that you
trans-led. Hold
actually
on just
took
a
care
second.
of
Hold
them?
on just a second.
Took care of them, like what, like paid their bills? No, I
I'm
don't
sorry,
Offering them
excuse me,
services, getting them through
excuse
I've helped
me,
a lot of trans people in my life.
trans-led
Yes.
organizations that are ran by trans people. I really want to
A
see
lot
what
of
you've
those
done for those
organizations are
organizations, 'cause I don't
ultra-liberal.
see any of y'all on the front line.
I'm on
The front line,
fighting
like, what are you
against
talking
the-
It's
about?
okay to
I'm
be
dedicated.
liberal on
Hold
some
on,
things,
hold on.
but
I've dedicated
to be
my
liberal in
entire life
everything, that's
to
a
in my
problem
own
to
way, and
me.
you can disagree with that because we all have our vehicles and our
need
methods
a balance.
towards
Absolutely.
promoting trans acceptance and the ultimate progression of the quality of life of trans people. I've dedicated my entire life to that, right? I access millions of people every single month on all my social media. And I have people
She's
reaching out
right.
all the time saying that I've saved them from,
what are
just
you
like we
physically
mentioned,
doing,
suicide.
Blair? Physically doing. That is
Physically,
the point.
Have you ever
Okay,
taken
so
on a
here's the
client
thing.
load? Have you ever
So
had
here's the
someone come
thing.
to you
I'm sorry,
homeless
do you
and
have
give
like,
them
do
resources?
I'm
you have
sure
like
you
a
guys
trans
feel very-
humanitarian youth fund
You guys
or
are asking
something?
questions and you have no interest in the answer. I'm sure you guys are very, very proud of
Because
the
you're
fact that
going
you can
around in
walk.
circles, Blair. That's what we're saying.
How could it be a circle when I haven't answered the question at all because you keep speaking? I'm sure you guys are very proud that you can enter a building and work with 25 people at a time. I access millions
Oh,
every
that is
month,
not
babe.
what.
I'll admit, Blair, she is sassy, but we need people like Blair because what's been going on lately with trans and LGBT as a whole has been ridiculous. And other people are seeing this, and our support is declining. It's declined a lot, I think, over the last year and a half or so because we have these activists out here who are making us look bad and making us look crazy. And the truth is, not all of us think that way or feel that way about certain issues. Most of us just want to blend in, live our lives, and not force our identities or our lifestyles on anyone because we're such a small percentage of the population. And everyone can't be trans, everyone cannot be LGBT. If that were the case, the human race would die out.
It's really disappointing that you would ever equate
This is
community
disappointing,
services.
actually. This is disappointing, actually.
This is very
It's disappointing that you would
disconnected.
disrespect all of the people that are in community service and all of these social workers that actually do
Correct.
help trans people.
And it's really disappointing that
I don't understand. How is she disrespecting people in community service? They're making up things to blame her and make her out to be the bad guy. That's what it seems like to me. And I don't know, it's liberals versus conservatives. This whole trans and LGBT topic has become political over the years. There was a time when none of this was political, and I think things were somewhat better back then. I think a lot of what's been going on has caused us to regress as a group.
Schools should include trans conversation in sex ed.
Should schools include transgender conversations in sex ed? Well, maybe for high school students, but this stuff is being taught to kids as early as elementary school through books, drag queens, and drag queens usually are not trans, but they're targeting elementary age students with LGBT and transgender and, the alternative lifestyle. And I don't see where that's necessary. For high school kids, students who are more mature, for them to touch on the topic of being trans, I don't think that's necessarily an issue, but bringing this to elementary age students, why? What's the point? They don't need to be taught about sexuality or gender identity at such an early age. Leave the kids alone.
It's okay for minors to get top surgery.
No, it's not.
really,
You guys waited on that?
that's pretty vile.
I feel like the vibe is like like as someone who had top surgery and went on hormones, like it's a very emotionally intense experience. I think in terms of like minors getting surgery, like the reason why I'm not like no to that is because I feel like maybe someone's like 17 or something. I honestly feel like
Minors
it is a
should
really
not be
intense
getting
surgery,
surgery.
but I feel like if somebody's like 17 or like late 16 and like feels like it's right for them, I mean, like people are really different. I know for me, like top surgery when I was like 16 would have been like so good and it would have literally like saved my spinal cord from like binding all the time. That's why I'm like, yeah, like I feel like in instances like it can make sense.
So I'm not a trans man, so I don't have the experience or whatnot, but I do think that it has to be done safely. There is a process when it comes to having these types of gender affirming surgeries. You know what I'm saying? Talking with your parents and then going to endocrinologists and going through therapy to make sure this is right for you. People have a choice to their autonomy. Now, I know that everybody does
And
not.
this is a big
but
money
those that
maker for Big
do
Pharma.
or whatnot should choose with
The
the
more
right
surgeries that they
medical
perform on children,
education.
the more money they're making.
They should choose with
The more medications that they have us
safety
on, the more money they're
and
making.
with full understanding of what is a benefit and what may not be a benefit.
I agree with a caveat that there does need to be some sort
This
of
guy reminds me of
process,
Boy
which there is,
George.
by the way,
Yeah.
in place.
Who's non-binary.
Sometimes it's a slip through. Yes, things
I
happen.
don't think
because,
he
again,
should have
as
been
I said earlier,
included
this is a
in a
big
trans
world.
debate either.
But to again negate people the ability to walk through a door that you have walked through, I'm going to say this again, and then close it behind you,
Boy George.
is a little bit of a slap in the face for
And I
anybody
like Boy
who's seeking
George. I
transition.
mean that as a compliment.
And as somebody who has experienced top surgery and also waited quite a bit of time, a lot of severe damage actually was created to my rib cage that my wife, who is half my size, actually
that's
has
because
the same
he binded
size,
for so
rib
long.
cage in the back as mine.
And that was his choice.
And these are permanent damage to my body because I binded for about 8 years, and there's even still issues that I have with breathing and certain issues that I face that, unfortunately, if I had that surgery a lot earlier, I would have a better posture. I'd have a lot of pain that is not within my body that I have to deal with on a daily basis, while simultaneously the idea that you
But
know,
if you had it earlier, your body
I
wouldn't have
get
developed
maybe under 16
to the
top
point where
surgery
you could
would be
safely
something that
have
would
surgery.
possibly even make me a little uncomfortable. But I also
Example,
know that
Jazz
I was homeless
Jennings,
at
case in
16,
point.
paying my own rent, and left my home at 16 and had to live my life as an adult very early. So I was able to make those decisions for myself. But I think it's weird that others can't seem to see that I could make a medical decision for myself when I had to physically take care of myself. And I look at some of these younger kids, and there's a sense of jealousy there and excitement for them at the same time, because they now have access to memories and being in the space and being in a comfortable body that, you know, I had a lot of isolation growing up in my childhood because I
But
didn't
there
feel
are a lot
comfortable
of
to present in a female
detransitioners
space
out
or a male
there who
space. I was
regret their
isolated constantly
transitions,
from school, from the outside world, from my family. And
and
my
they were
transition, my
coerced to
top
being
surgery has done nothing but
trans,
take
being
physical
diagnosed as
pain.
trans. I don't think that minors should be having gender affirming surgeries or being prescribed hormone replacement therapy prior to the age of 18 before they're legally old enough to consent. And a lot of times, you know, these doctors, they're in cahoots with the pharmaceutical industry. So, of course, they're going to diagnose a child who as trans when they're not in fact trans. Because there is a financial component to this, and a lot of times what they'll do, they'll guilt trip the parent into believing that their child is trans. And there are a lot of detransitioners out there who regret having surgeries, gender affirming surgeries, early in life. There are women, biological women, who were identified as trans men for a time, whose voices are permanently changed because they were on testosterone at an early age, and they ended up regretting their transition and realized that they were not in fact trans.
I don't think any minor should be having life-altering elective surgery or life-altering elective medicalization, period. And so when I work on bills across the country that do ban this for minors, there's a couple things I point out. I point out that I don't think a 16-year-old female who wants breast implants should be able to get that either. No. When we look at what we allow minors to do, like surgeries and stuff like that, they're not life-saving. They're not, if you don't get it, you're not going to die. It's not like getting, like, having appendicitis and having to get your appendix removed or anything like that. It's elective. I think that's the key point here.
Agreed.
My thing about surgery, I'm actually vehemently against surgery, like all of it, top surgery, bottom surgery, all of it. Particularly because you need your genitals. Like, it's just that simple.
Hello.
You know, you have these people now who have non-functioning fake penises and vaginas that, you know, you've had issues like, for instance, Richie had, where like your urethra folds in half and then you can't pee no more.
This is about.
Are you against top surgery too? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just surgery in general. I don't think that that's necessarily like you said, it's not like you have appendicitis. It's not like you've got like a bone spur. It's, you know, like you don't.
I disagree with
not
that because I was
surgery,
in physical pain, and the moment that I got that top surgery, the pain was alleviated.
Well, that means you needed a breast reduction, my friend.
No, it's just
No,
binding,
that's
dude.
from
Binding goes
in
crazy.
general. It
I mean, I
causes
binded
some
for 8
issues.
years. I know, like it sucks.
I know, but like if you just keep binding, like honestly, like my ribs are like, I'm like, ew, I hate my ribs. Like they're all like messed up.
Is that an
get your
issue
body
with
type.
safety of binding though? I'm actually curious.
Yeah,
about
like
this.
honestly,
it's the
but
safety
the
of,
thing is
of
too,
how they
like
teach you to
I
bind?
think it comes with like the size of your chest. So like I had a big chest, so like
Same.
I had it was the only way. You know what I mean?
Same.
And I did try and like bind like safely, and I did buy like reputable like binder brands, but it is a lot when you're doing it for a really long time
I
and
used to wear it
ultimately
for 3
like.
days straight.
I know, me too. Like, and that's what's like you're not supposed to.
Was
but
was
like,
your doctor telling you that that's not safe because you're not even supposed to wear
Yeah,
it
of
24
course.
hours?
My doctor's
straight,
old
right?
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, and I
6
did
to
have
8
to go
hours is-
through like for top surgery and testosterone. Like I had to go through like a really big process, and I think that's my thing is like instead of an age thing, I think there's like there should be a process. You should have to like live as that gender and be seeking care and be having like a therapist for long term and a psychiatrist for long term and an endocrinologist for long term, and like it's really like specific to the person, and I think would be like really rare anyway. But that's just my stance.
So I was living in Colorado at the time that I started hormone replacement therapy. And let me tell you, it was very easy to have access to hormones. When I met with my primary care provider, she wanted to prescribe me hormones on day one, but I told her no, I'm going to need a few weeks to take care of some things because I wanted to do cryopreservation prior to starting HRT. So I was able to take about a month, a little longer, to get that all worked out before starting hormones. But it was an easy process. This was back in 2018, and I didn't inform consent. I didn't need a letter from a therapist or any type of medical diagnosis from a medical professional. I was basically in and out. That's how easy it was. And I'm not saying that having, easy access to hormones is necessarily and always a bad thing. No, but it was an easy process. And because it's so easy, that leaves room for people to easily get access to hormones and regret it and realize that they're not transgender.
Passionate about, because I think there are few things more vile, more irresponsible, more, dangerous than saying a child can consent to permanently removing a body part that serves an extremely important function. Detransitioners all over the country can never breastfeed their children if they can even have them, because if they did other things, that can stop them from having kids at all, right? The idea that a child can consent to a sex change, to gender affirming surgery, if you believe that, there's really nothing that you can believe they can't consent to, right? Because that's pretty extreme.
That's a great
permanent
point.
body modification under
Great
the best
point.
circumstances. So you want to move aside all the complications, all the things you can't do, the sterilization, not being able to feed your kids. You can even set that aside. Just the permanent body modification. I mean, you have to be so demented to believe that a child fully understands. I heard a few conversations about, well, if the child fully understands, they don't. They don't, because they're children.
I'm
That's like how
21
being a
and I still
child
don't.
works.
See,
17-year-old,
love her or
like a
hate her,
17-year-old's, like,
Blair
living
makes
as male for, like,
perfect
5
sense.
The
years.
She
conflict
makes
about
great
minors
points.
and
Yeah, but a
12-year-olds
17-year-old
are
is a
getting
minor.
top surgery. So it's easy to say, well, if it's 17-year-olds,
And yes,
okay,
it is true.
well,
In my
There are
state, that's actually
there's a
people who
nuanced
deny
conversation
it,
about even
but
17-year-olds,
they're
I
actually
guess,
doing
because the age of
surgeries
consent in
on
some places
children.
is lower, but that's not what's happening, right? It's 12-year-olds.
When we talk about minors, it's like, what age range are we really talking about here?
Anyone
because
under
the thing
18.
because the thing is, when we talk about detransitioners or whatnot, all I hear is a lot of regret, right? Regret that they got these surgeries, regret of the complications, regret, and that's fine. I'm not taking away anybody's experience because these things do happen. But let's also remember, again, there is a process. Now, I have a lot of empathy for those detransitioners that have gone through the process and they are suffering.
But
I
it's
do
not
have
just
empathy for
detrans
that.
people. It's
But
not
I'm
just
but that's
detrans
where I'm
people.
just talking about in the conversation, for this particular conversation. And I understand what you're saying, because you're absolutely right. There are more people.
Even
that are
among
doing that.
adults, we all
But-
do different things in
but-
our transition. Some of us
correct.
want bottoms, some of us don't. Some of us want tops, some of us don't.
I
So
understand,
you
but-
need a lot of time as an adult to figure out what you want to do.
But see, the thing is, though,
Absolutely.
some adults don't even understand what they want to do. So that's
Exactly,
the
so
kind of
how
thing.
can a child?
But
But I
see, a
wanna-
children,
I
that's,
wanna
wait
touch
a
on
minute,
one
let's
thing
not,
you said.
let's
Fucking
not
planet.
underestimate the power of these kids today, okay? They are very much more educated because they have much more resources and access than we did
Wow.
coming up. So let's be
So
very
they're
clear about
advanced
that.
and they can
when we
consent.
talk
Who
about
else says that?
detransitioners, that was
Not
been the main
me.
topic here or whatnot, because we
But
want to
it's
bring
not now.
detransitioners in to the room, so there's a space. Thank you.
To your point about the reason why I'm against it is because, like you said, the children need to go through the proper steps, the parents, the doctors. But in the state of California, if you, as a parent, tell your minor, no, you're not getting this, I'm not affirming your gender, I'm taking your kids away, and
That
California is
is
going to
totally
raise your kids for
wrong.
you. So
Canada
how's
too.
that?
Canada too.
That's not right.
We also know that
That is wrong.
Like, all
that
those
is not
safeguards
child
that you're
abuse.
talking
That's
about,
protecting
they're
your
not happening.
kids.
Yeah, that's
They're
what I'm
not
saying.
happening at all.
California will take your
we
kids.
we know because there was a whistleblower out of St. Louis, and this isn't some conservative whistleblower. She was married to a trans man, and she considers herself queer. So she blew the whistle and said that they had an in-house doctor. If you couldn't find a affirming therapist to sign off on the form, they would pencil whip it.
But do you believe that it should happen? Do you believe there should be a process when it comes to medical transition?
No,
We have to
there's no
stop
right
it, so,
process for
yeah.
kids to hack
Oh
off
no,
their
I was asking
breasts.
her, honey. I'm sorry.
No,
I was
no.
asking
Well,
her.
I answered because
No,
I'm
you
here in
don't.
the room. So
No.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like personally, like if we're talking about like a 12-year-old getting top surgery, like to me that's just like medical malpractice. Because I know for me, like to get top surgery, like I can only get it at 18 because my insurance covered it at 18. But I had to start that process like long before. Like even hormones was a long process. So I think there's like an area of literal like medical malpractice because no like kid at that age should be getting that in my opinion because you do not know. But I do think there are instances where like a 16 or 17-year-old like could get it. And I don't know if that means like banning like below 16 or like whatever, but.
So in the UK, it was the, I can't remember what it was. It's the reason why they're shutting down the Tavistock clinic in the UK though, is because they found that when you start a child on hormone or on puberty blockers, then hormones, it's basically a foregone conclusion that they're gonna end up having surgery. It puts them on a path to, it's a sunk cost fallacy.
I just, again, I don't understand this obsession with
Obsession.
other people's children.
It's about caring about kids.
I'm talking. Oh my God.
it's
Get it
obsession.
together.
I have it together.
Boy George.
Yo, the obsession.
It's not
with
an
the
obsession.
conservatives
It's caring
about
about
other people's
kids
kids
and letting
if
them
it is
be
your child, it
kids.
is your choice what you do with your kid.
Just to talk about someone who's at 16 and their level of consent in the state of California, from my understanding, someone who's 16 can also drop out of high school, which would severely affect their life. And they have access to that decision if they want to, because say they want to get into the job market or whatever their reason is. But they have that option to make that choice at 16. I will agree with you that someone at 12, I'd be uncomfortable with somebody at 12 years old getting surgery completely because there's still a lot of the world for them to learn about themselves, how to navigate it, et cetera, et cetera. But for us to have access to be able to drop out of high school if we wanted to, and make such a life-changing decision that could
That's
affect
a poor
you
comparison
economically,
because
socially, so many different ways. But then to say,
Dropping out of high
you know what,
school
you're not
isn't
old enough
going
to
to
make this
physically
decision, for me, again,
alter
as somebody
you
who was 16
for
and was in
life.
such a religious family and all the restrictions that I had, if I didn't have access to those things, I don't know if I would be here. And I've learned a lot through my transition and through my access. And I even grew up in the wild, wild west where everything was still on YouTube and we didn't really even have medical providers really
And dropping
even
out of high school
giving us
isn't
guidance, and
permanent.
especially
You can
trans men. So
easily
I find it rather uncomfortable that we're able to
finish
make a
high school
16-year-old be
at
able to
any
make that type
time
of decision.
later
An
on.
18-year-old is allowed to go into service, but for some reason we can't give that same access to a kid to have that consciousness. Because I can tell you at 16, I knew who I was. I'm not at 12, not
See,
at 14, but
16,
16 is a
that's a
certain
little
level of
different. I
consciousness
know,
and experience that you've
if
experienced
the
in society,
parents
that you
want to
understand the
consent
pocket
to
you fit
that
in.
and the
But
child
just
is
because
16,
other bad
I'm
things
not
happen doesn't
totally
mean that
against
that is
that, but
okay. It's like, so just
to
because
play
they
it
can
safe,
drop out
I
of school
don't
means
think
they should
that
be able to cut
anyone
their
under
breasts off?
18 should be having any type of surgery.
Non-binary should not be considered under
surgery
the
should
trans umbrella.
Let's go.
Be delayed until 18.
This is evil.
I think that the concept of a transgender umbrella is inherently an issue, right? Because when you're talking about something as nuanced, complex, full of social dynamics, medical dynamics, so many things to be considered. When you're talking about a transsexual, you should really be specific, right? And this entire concept actually of transgender is relatively new. Like it came about in the 70s or 80s through.
So I do think that being non-binary and being transgender are two separate things. Maybe there are some similarities, but overall it's separate. It's not the same thing.
I believe that non-binary people are a part of the community because I have so many shared experiences with so many non-binary
See, they can
people
be
I
a
know.
part of it.
We have
I
very
believe that we
similar
can
experiences
work
in growing
together,
up
but
with
being
dysphoria,
trans and
with
non-binary
transition, with
are not
anything,
one
and
and the
nobody has to
same.
do anything. Nobody has to transition in a way they don't want to transition. And yeah, like let's be a happy family. My God, let's all just be happy. That's my vibe.
Yeah, or
Can't
fight
we
the
all
fight
just get
together.
along?
Yeah, like let's do
Honestly,
it. Like
We have
unite.
separate fights, though. That's the thing.
No, we
I don't know
don't.
if it
We're
is.
weakening our borders by creating this divide within our own community. This is so silly. Look, I actually understand like a lot of the points that are being made here from the conservative side because I grew up conservative.
I was in an
I voted when I was
Instagram
18, I
video
voted for
with,
fucking Bush. Yeah,
I believe his name is
Like, I
Alexander
was
last year
conservative,
for
okay?
So we're the same age.
So
coming out day.
it was not
on
until my later
Instagram
age that I kind of
in a
decided,
reel.
like, you know what? Let me be more open to different types of communication, different types of people. I actually talked so much shit about
I immediately thought, he
pronouns.
looks like Boy
Like,
George.
they, them, all this. I was like, what is this trash? When it first started really coming out, I did not disagree. I did not agree with it. I was like, what is this? This is stupid. How can you be a them? Blah, 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 blah.
You were
and I did the
correct.
whole thing, the grammatically.
Blair.
You're interrupting me.
But you were correct. I'm
But
just saying. I'm agreeing with
They
you.
asked you not to comment, and you're commenting. So if you could stop, that'd be great. Thank you.
Ooh.
So anyway, as I was saying, you know, so I changed my mind because I got to spend time around other people who were non-binary, who were non-conforming, and I got to speak with them and I got to experience their life and their experiences. And then I realized myself, I'm like, shit, maybe this is what I've been experiencing my whole life, only because I was exposed to it. If I would have never been exposed to it, I would have never known that this could have been my experience. And I would have lived the rest of my
Blair
life
plays with her hair a
as a
lot.
different person, as somebody who I'm not. And it's funny that you keep talking, that some people keep talking about, oh, you need to go through HRT, you need to have surgeries in order to be trans. That is all garbage.
Another thing I never said. It's just so crazy.
Again,
I did.
you're still interrupting me while
See,
I'm
I don't
talking.
think you
This is the
necessarily
second
have
time
to have
now.
surgery
And
this is the
or
second
be
time
on
now.
HRT
If you
you're
can
trans.
claim
Some
someone
people
said something
can't.
they didn't say, they should be able to correct you in the moment.
Do you feel good now that you said what you needed to say?
I feel fine.
Wonderful.
I'm sitting pretty. I'm fine.
So, I mean, sometimes
Gee.
it's like the power that needs to hold me
I
back.
mean, you're
because
appropriating a medical condition. That's what you're really doing.
I exist. I am proof that non-binary people exist and that it is a thing. And because I'm sitting right here in front of all of you, I'm a real person. This is my
Yes.
experience, just as yours.
Non-binary
is-
people do
just as yours is the
exist.
trans experience. That as a trans woman, as a trans man, or as whatever. But I'm not here to belittle your
But non-binary
experience
is
or
not
to tell you that you don't
trans.
exist. And that's the difference between you and I. That you're trying to cancel you. And when I say you, I'm talking about conservatives. And maybe it is you. You're part of the thing. You're part of the thing. So
Here's where I
why-
get to
so why
interject
is it
because there's
not
a lot of
okay?
things said about
Stop
me.
addressing her and just talk to everybody.
But what is your dysphoria?
Well, there was something. Okay. So another complete, I don't want to say the word lie, but I guess that's what it is about what I've said here, right? I never said you don't exist. So we can add that to the long list of things y'all have said I've said that I didn't. We know you exist. You're here. You're not fictitious, right?
See, the
My
liberal
point is,
group,
you're
all of
different
them
than me,
were
and I don't even think you deny
going
that. But
after
yet, when I
Blair.
say it, it's an issue, right? The same way that he said he can't take that off, you can, right? It's different. At the very least, it's different. And when we have a community that there are so many categories, demi-girl, demi-boy, astrosexual, all this shit, but
Too
y'all
many
can't fathom that maybe
categories.
that would be a different category than what I am when we have such different, as you keep saying, and everyone keeps saying, experiences? It doesn't make sense. A bisexual is different than a gay man.
Can I ask a question?
This
I
is
just actually want to
true.
ask you a question. What is your dysphoria, though? Because gender dysphoria, or sex dysphoria, as I would rather call it, is an uncomfortability between my secondary sex characteristics, not just what I wear on a daily basis, because masculinity and femininity doesn't have anything to do with being trans.
But that's not true. But that is not true. You can have dysphoria without having to be dysphoric about your sex parts.
But what is your
you can have
dysphoria?
dysphoria
What is
about
your
anything.
dysphoria?
Straight cis women have dysphoria about their breasts all the time. They get breast augmentation.
dysphoria.
That doesn't mean that I'm not dysphoric about certain things. That doesn't mean that. And you don't know my life. You're not in my life
Well, that's
daily.
why I asked you a question.
You don't know what
I
I
cannot-
experience, the different things that I experience personally.
See, I don't think you should ask someone what their dysphoria is because, that's definitely something that we're not comfortable with. And, it eats away at us, dysphoria does. But I don't know, in an appropriate setting, it might be okay if you know a person well enough, if you're close to them in that way, that you would ask them something like that. But to ask someone that you don't know, I don't think you should ask someone that. Nor do I think that you should ask a trans person if they've had the surgery downstairs. That is a no-no. So this woman here in the orange mentioned that she does not pass. I think she passes a lot more than she thinks she does. And she said that she no longer uses the women's restroom because of the fact that it made women uncomfortable. That's her decision. If she wants to honor that, that's fine. But I think she passes more than she thinks she does. When I see her, when I look at her, I see woman.
I feel that some
Well, you're
trans
using a
influencers are
metaphor for
disconnected.
something that's
That is not a
professional.
They're gonna
metaphor.
speak
That
in
is
platitudes
that
the
is
whole
a
time. That's
tangible
what they're gonna do.
resource organization. Because this is where y'all's privilege come in. Because if y'all don't need
My privilege?
services,
My
from
content is a
trans-
resource.
If you do not need
First of all,
services
ma'am, don't come from my
nonprofits
privilege.
that are trans-led,
Because
you have
I was raised by
privilege
drug
and you
addicts.
have
I have
access.
HIV.
I create the resources.
I would rather
I create
work
the
with
resources.
So you can't always say that just because someone is conservative or they're not black that they automatically have privilege. Blair, she's had struggles too. She's dealt with struggles. And the guy who said that he was raised by drug addicts and he has HIV, I don't think he's privileged either. So just because someone's conservative, if they're white, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're privileged. Yes, white privilege does exist. I'm not denying that, but I don't think it was necessary for Blossom to say that.
Phobic, because let's be clear, of the isms that are in the
God.
military.
Man, we live
that
in
a lot of
America.
us face.
People are allowed
Excuse me,
to
I'm
be.
speaking. Do not interrupt a black trans woman when she's speaking.
You've
Let's be
interrupted
very
me
clear.
hella
When it comes
times.
to when
Hella
it comes to
times.
isms,
Did the interrupter just
again,
say
if you
use
are
her
black,
skin tone
if
to
you
say
are
you couldn't
black,
interrupt her?
if you are black and
That's
trans
amazing.
and you want to go into the military, I am quite sure that my experience would not look the same as y'all's. And if we can't wake that up, then we're really being
They don't
complicit.
look at your race.
I don't think your
But you-
skin tone makes any difference.
Well,
As somebody-
yes, it does.
No,
Well,
as
but it
somebody-
doesn't.
as somebody who's
But it
serving in the
doesn't.
For you
military,
to
as
tell a
somebody
black
who- no,
person that is so
as somebody who's serving,
problematic. For you to
Why
tell
do
a
you have
person
to
of
put
color
black in
here,
front of it?
because this is my experience and this is my reality. First of all,
has nothing
that
to
is
do
so
with your transness,
disrespectful
though.
to tell a person
I'm gonna
of
have an
color,
aneurysm.
a black person, how they should feel. How dare you sit up there
Okay,
and
well,
say
no,
that?
it's disrespectful
as
for you
somebody
to
who's
tell a white
quiet,
person
hold on
that.
just
You
a second. Let me
screamed
finish
at
my
him
point.
and used
I
your
did not
skin.
scream
Yes,
at a
you
point.
did.
No,
No, you're
you
being
wanted me to come
disrespectful.
back.
Rewind the tape,
You
you
wanted me
screamed.
here and I'm
You
here.
screamed.
So what you
Rewind
gonna
the tape,
do?
that was good.
You wanted me here, so I'm here.
Replay.
You in
Right, so
particular.
be- so be
let's
respectful.
go.
Okay, let's stop it right there. What Blossom said, do not interrupt the black trans woman. There was no reason for that. Oh, gee. As a black trans woman, I would never say something like that. I agree with her about, as a black person in the military, yes, your experience is going to be different. As a black civilian, your experience is going to be different. Is it right? No. Is it true? Yes. That's how it is. I wish we could change that, but as of right now, that's how it is, apparently. But it's wrong, yes. And I don't know, referring to myself as a person of color, I don't do that anymore because everyone else gets grouped in with the black experience. When you say you're a person of color, okay, that kind of says that, our experiences are the same, and they're not. But for Blossom to just outright and say, do not interrupt the black trans woman, I think that was dumb. That made her look stupid.
But it doesn't.
For you to tell a black person that is so
somebody who's
problematic,
serving-
for you
So
to
why
tell
do
a
you have
person
to
of
put
color
black in
here,
front of it?
because this is my experience and this is my reality. First of all,
has nothing
that
to
is
do
so
with your
See, don't even
disrespectful
touch
to
on
tell
that
a
in
person
I'm gonna
of
have an
color,
a group
aneurysm.
of
a black
non-blacks.
person,
That-
how they
that's-
should feel. How dare you sit up there
Okay,
and
well,
say
no,
that?
counterproductive.
As
Somebody
somebody
who's
who's a white
quiet, hold on
person.
just
You
a second. Let me
screamed
finish
at
my
him
point.
and used
I
your
did not
skin.
scream
Yes,
at a
you
point.
did.
No,
No, you're
you
being
wanted me to come
disrespectful.
back.
Rewind the tape,
You
you
wanted me
screamed.
here and I'm
You
here.
screamed.
So what you
Rewind
gonna
the
do?
tape, that was good.
You wanted me here, so I'm here.
Replay.
You
Right,
in particular.
so be- so be
Let's
respectful.
go.
and speak like
No,
a
it's
white
not
person.
my-
What are
it's
you
not my
talking
fault.
about?
It's not my fault that y'all don't understand respect.
This is like Jerry
Oh my
Springer.
God.
Can you please stop? We're good.
You need to calm down.
No, you do, honey.
Oh my God. Someone get a Xanax for her.
Oh, keep it cute, girl. Keep it real cute.
Oh,
Your
that's
bodyguard's
inappropriate,
outside,
but the rest
keep
of
it
shit
real
isn't.
cute now.
Okay.
The rules are.
See, both of
you
them
cannot
are
speak
clashing
when
like.
somebody else is speaking.
Fair.
Okay? If you haven't found a middle ground, that's okay.
I think we did.
Okay?
I feel like there was a little bit
Yeah,
mixed in there.
Yeah, I agree with what y'all were saying. It wasn't
A lot of
really,
bickering, a lot of going
thought it
back
was
and
great.
forth.
So imagine when we
I feel like it was really interesting hearing your perspective about being in the military, and I don't know if there's really like a true middle ground found, but I feel like
Yeah.
I have like a better understanding of kind of where you're coming from with it.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of points make sense, and it's also an issue that is hard to get a definitive answer and agreement on.
Everybody doesn't have the same struggle, and that does include in the military. Some people in our community have to go through much more extremes than others.
See, I agree with
And so
Blossom
for
on
me,
this,
my question
on what she's
becomes,
saying.
how are they being taken care of? Especially when a trans person comes out in the military, yeah, we have these things enacted, but that doesn't mean that in reality and in physical time that they're being treated under what is in the law that's supposed to protect them. So that's where I'm coming from or whatever, because reality and what's on paper are two different things.
I'll share a quick story with you about my time in the military. I wasn't in that long, but we were assigned details one evening, and we had a partner to do our details with. And I was assigned details with this kid. He was maybe 18. I was 19 at the time. And prior to going into the military, someone told me that, yes, you will experience racism in the military, or even in basic training, so be prepared. But we had our details for that evening, and our details were to sweep we called it the pad, but it was the area where we would line up. And our job was to sweep it, that evening. So when the time came for us to do our details, I found him and, I just kind of patted him on the back, and said, hey, let's get started on our details. And this kid looks at me and says, don't touch me, don't touch me. I could tell he was from the South, where I don't remember, but I thought that was kind of weird. And I was like, I'm not coming on to you. And, but he was like, don't touch me, don't touch me. I said, okay, let's just get this done. But I thought that was a little strange for him to just, act like that. I wasn't, I don't know. It was weird. So this will be our final prompt. It's about gender affirming transition is suicide prevention. I don't think that it's suicide prevention per se, because if you're suicidal because you cannot transition, I don't think you're in the right headspace to transition.
Gender affirming transition is suicide prevention.
Look at our unified front.
I mean, obviously, it's a known thing that trans youth are at greater risk of suicide and just suicidal ideations, which are horrible and will plague you and like ruin your life and make it awful. And so I know there are a lot of kids in a lot
See,
of
I agree
pain,
with
and
him
growing
on
up
that.
as a trans kid, I was in so much
But I don't
pain, and
think
I feel like I
that
could have been
they should
spared of a
resort to
lot of that and
transitioning
gotten
because
to
they're
enjoy my
suicidal
life a lot more
if they
if I
can't
had earlier
transition.
access to gender affirming care. And even the gender affirming care that I did receive later in my life, and I went on hormones when I was like 16 and I got top surgery at 17, that completely changed my life in the most dramatic way. And so, yeah, I think it is life-saving care, and I think a lot of trans people would agree.
I agree as well too. I think gender dysphoria is a real thing, and we all deal
It
with gender
is,
dysphoria
but there are other
differently.
options. There are
I
other
know
ways
for myself
to
or whatnot, there were times I
deal
wanted
with
to
your
end it all.
dysphoria,
And
especially
for me,
when
I
you're
went
that
to
young.
desperate measures to align my body with how I feel on the inside. And for some of us, especially living in the South, we don't always have access to hormone care. So some of us have to go to the black market. We have to do things to our body to be able to align us to where we are not willing to commit suicide.
See, I think
I don't think gender. I
sorry.
don't think that's the only way. I think there are other ways as well.
Chosen to not medically transition in my bottom half, let's put it that way. But, and this is the first time I'm actually saying this out loud, but I am having facial feminization surgery.
had
And
it.
that was an incredibly ridiculously difficult journey, even as an adult who has a really good job and access to really great healthcare. But I still had to go through so many hoops, and I was still denied by insurance. And in my own personal life, I've also struggled quite a bit with mental health, and
See, I think
a lot
insurance
of that
should
really
cover
relates to the
gender
certain parts of my
affirming
body.
care
Like I
for
always hated my
adults.
body when I was younger, and I didn't understand why. and
Medical
you
care,
know,
that
and I was
is.
always dressing, you know, as like a cis male, and I just had all this stuff just didn't fit. It just didn't feel right, and it was just like this darkness in my life. Like I just wanted it, you know, gone, and I just learned to live with it. But then eventually, like, you know, after figuring out who I am and all that, like now I know like this is life-saving care. Like this for me is life-saving care. Like who knows where I could be in a few years had I not known who I am and had access to care.
How y'all doing?
I think too often we hear, you know, that if we don't affirm our child's, you know, gender identity that's different than their sex, then they're going to commit suicide. We hear this all the time, especially from the detransition community whose parents were told this and it was manipulative. We hear politicians say this all the time when they're trying to, you know, stop bills or pass bills. The problem with that is that's the same line that abusers use. So when you're in a relationship, if you're going to leave somebody and they say, if you leave me, I'll kill myself, then that is an abusive situation. And it's not,
That's a
you know,
great
so
point. She makes
that's
she
the
makes a
premise we
great point.
start with. Transition, I mean, we're all here, we know, transition is not an easy process. It takes a heavy mental toll. And so I really think that you have, if you're already suicidal, you have to get that in check. You have to be in a healthy place before you can even think about going through the medicalization of transitioning. You can socially transition. I think that's absolutely fine. But I think that, you know, before you even think about medically transitioning, then I think you have
Yes,
to have
even
your
if a
head right
child
before
wants
that.
to
'Cause-
socially
and hormones will make
transition,
you
that's fine.
feel kind of crazy anyways. So I think that that's why, it's not.
The conservatives won the debate. A lot of what the liberals said, not all of it, but a lot of what they said did not make sense. And the conservatives made the best points. They had the better arguments. So it was a good debate. You know, there were times when things got a little heated, but overall, you know, it's good to see two sides debate each other like that because, you know, usually in the media, what we see is usually the liberals or the activists going out and doing crazy things. And that's a bad look for us because not all of us who are trans feel that way or want to do those things or, you know, share the sentiments or go after kids and convince them that they're transgender or LGBT and expose them to that. Not all of us are for that. So this was a good debate, and I would like to see more spaces where they're able to discuss things like this. But I have yet to see any trans people who are black and more conservative. You know, I realize that I'm more conservative on certain issues. There are some issues that I'm liberal on, but overall, my values are conservative. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So take care, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.